This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
All right, welcome everybody. Welcome all our Torah Anytime viewers. Before we begin, a quick announcement. We are, just in case anybody wants, I do get emails regarding the class, so just for the information, our girls class is every Thursday at 1601 Quentin Road, at the BJX location, at 8 p.m. Now, I would recommend whoever is on the online world and does want to join us, please do join us. But also email me prior just to make sure that the class is still on. The email is rabbizitron@TorahAnytime.com. And we also have our men's class on Tuesday on 630 Avenue S at 8 p.m. So 630 is not the time, it's the address. I get that confusion a lot. It's the address is 630 Avenue S at Bet Yehuda at 8 p.m. Again, also email me just to make sure the class is on schedule. Okay, let us begin. Tonight's class, we are continuing with the subject, can we prove God? Can we see God in the world? Now, I know I've been getting, we are dealing with a lot of concepts here that is very hard to grasp and understand, let alone to memorize. What I do want to do, just, every few classes in this series, I do have to mention out there, one of the main goals of this is not only to help you better understand that there is a God, but rather also give you the tools and the ability to be able to convince other people that there is a God. Now, I bring a lot of scientific proofs, a lot of evidence, a lot of yada, yada, yada. Not everybody's going to memorize it. At the end, you don't have to memorize all this information. You need to know this information because the final class that I'm going to give at the end of this series, on the combined series, is going to be a big summary on everything and how to use it in practical terms. So, that being said, today we're going to be speaking about a topic called intelligent design. A very, very big argument in the scientific world. Is it scientific? Is it not scientific? And when we get to that, B'ezrat Hashem. I was once speaking to a young man with a very, very troubled past, and we were going to talk about religion. Now, when I have to deal usually in this situation, I know that one of the first steps, and this is the way that I go in generally, one of the first steps when you're speaking about religion, you don't speak about religion, because that's not going to help. The first step is to speak about God, because if God doesn't exist in that person's mind, there is nothing to talk about. There is nothing to even go forward with religion. So, first step in my curriculum, and I set a long time for this, for this conversation with this man, because I knew a little bit about him, and we started off at about 10:30 at night. We ended around close to 1 a.m. And the way that I started was I understand you really went through a hard time in your life. You had a really hard, emotionally, physically, a lot of issues that he had to overcome in his life, which led him to a lot of other issues, including drugs, including a lot of other problems. So, and right now he lived a life as a completely secular person. So I go to him and I say, listen, he says, I know that you had a very hard time, you had a very difficult upbringing, but you should know that there is a God. And then I was getting ready to pound him out with the past few hour classes that I already gave on all the proof that there is a God. And then he stops me in his tracks and he's like, no, don't worry, yeah, I know that there's a God. And I'm like, huh? What do you mean you know that there's a God? Because I never encountered this. What if you know that there's a God, then how come you're not religious? There's some sort of a miscommunication going on over here. You told me this is quite a few years ago this is going. So he's like, oh no, I know for sure that there's a God. So then I started getting curious and I was stepping over the boundaries. I'm like, how do you know that there's a God? What? I'm like, I don't know how much I want to step forward and be like, wait, maybe there isn't a God. I'd be like, okay, if you believe in God, maybe I should just leave it the way it is. But I was like, how do you know that there's a God? And we were doing the walking and talking. The people that walk and talk. Somebody who's at home and they're on the phone and they're climbing on couches. Spider-Man up everywhere, and they go all over the place. So we actually met inside, and he's like, do you mind if we walk and talk? So we walked and talked. So he turns around, there was a tree and a bush. He says, you got to be kidding me. He says, I'm a logical person. You see a tree, you see a bush over here. Is it possible that God doesn't exist, that these two things exist over here? So I'm like, in the middle, I'm like, high five, man. High five. We're done. I'm like, I'm going home early tonight. We happen to actually, speak quite a lot. But the idea is that when you see things in the world, it points to a designer, and that is the idea behind intelligent design. Intelligent design means that you see a watch, there's a watchmaker. You see a phone, there's a phone maker. You see a remote, there's a remote maker. This one happens to be Sony. This one happens to be Samsung. There are people, it doesn't just come into existence. So when you see things, you know that it comes in for some sort of existence, some sort of way. The more complex the idea is, or the object is, the more higher level you could consider the maker. Now, if somebody goes and knows how to make a chair, that's very nice. Congratulations, you're able to build an IKEA chair out of instructions made out of only one page in a different language. You're very good. But if you're able to go and build a computer from scratch, that gives you a little bit more of an applause. Now, if you're able to build a flying, airplane, and I have to emphasize the flying part, flying airplane, that means that you're even a greater creator. So the greater the creation, the greater the creator. And that is the simple idea behind it. What evolutionists say, which was what we spoke about last time, we're not going to go into details because we really spent quite some time in it in the last class, but I'll give you just some brief overview. They say that no. A watch doesn't mean there's a watchmaker because there's something called evolution, natural selection. There are things that can happen by chance by itself. Now, last class we spoke about the problems with this. We spoke about what is the odds of this happening, the probability of this happening is very slim to none. We also spoke about falsifying information. Now, think about it like this. When you see the Palestinian media, you see, let's say, they go over there and they'll show, I'll give you a better example. I actually seen this. They show, of course, because Israel, is terrible and we bombed them and they're innocent people and how can we do that? And they showed a bunch of, corpses, and I'm using air quotes for corpses, with white sheets over them. And it was scanning the room, and then it was very interesting because one of the corpses was moving under. It just, I guess it got a nervous twitch or something. They were shaking over there. And the camera was moving back and forth. The cameraman didn't obviously get it. It got uploaded online or whatever, media format and source that they, platform that they use. And then it got caught. And then people were like, why is that guy moving? The guy's not dead. And then they found other different clips where you see before, it was videoed by I guess somebody else and it got leaked out, that before an explosion, and I'm using air quotes, happens in a Palestinian territory, there is, people running around with a makeup crew. And they're it's like Hollywood have, put dust over there. There was I may be wrong with this information, but I believe it was in Syria. There was a picture of circulating of a little boy after a bomb explosion. Was that Syria? And they were like, look, this is so terrible, what's happening over there? Meanwhile, it was something that happened years and years ago. So, the story of the boy who cried wolf? Eventually people are going to stop believing you. Of course, this is not going to happen for the Palestinians because God runs the world. And no matter how much they lie and how much they present the information wrong, people are still going to believe them. But regardless of the fact, the idea still stands that if you keep on lying, people are going to stop believing you. Now, I can't say that about evolution because evolution, not overall everybody's lying, but there was enough evidence found that the information was falsified or withheld, for that matter. There was also misrepresentation of the information. I spoke to somebody, actually I spoke to a few people that grew up in the public school system, and they were taught evolution, and I asked them the simple question of where did the first matter come from, or where did the first living cell come from? Right? Spontaneous generation is the general answer, which they didn't even know for that reason. But I said, let's speak about matter, the basic stuff. Where did we spoke about the first class, the Big Bang. Where did the first matter come from? And they're like, wow, that's a good question. I'm like, wait, they didn't teach you that when they taught you this? And they were like, no. I'm like, that is not, you're not teaching, you're just giving them the facts that you want to give them. This is complete misrepresentation of the facts. If you want to teach them something like evolution, teach them all the facts. Teach them the part that we know is a fact. Teach them the part that we know is a theory, and we don't know more than that. So the idea of it also is that when you're presenting information, many people are, and I have to be very careful with the words I use, and I don't want to use the word manipulate, but I'm going to use the word manipulate. But know that I put a little asterisk on manipulate, that many people are very easy to manipulate. Now, why is that? Because many people will just accept, you're sitting there in a class, and the teacher, the professor there presents the information, and everyone's writing those covalent bonds. Okay, what's covalent bond? No one knows. And then you just write stuff down, and then you take it as facts because this is what the professor taught them. And no one, you don't ask questions. People that ask questions are of the few. Now, when you have, and by the way, if you just throw very hard words, at the student, how do you spell that? I know it's a F sound, but is there a PH, T, PH, P going on over there? Because, you go and you throw some difficult words, people get lost, and they just accept it as fact and be like, what do you mean? I was taught evolution. Evolution is a fact. I'm like, do you know anything about evolution? Might be a good question what they got on their tests and the quizzes, but when they so strongly believe on this religion called evolution, in any case, it's with all this information, it's no wonder that people believe in evolution because people don't ask. Now, when you're looking at the opposite of evolution is the intelligent design. No, nothing happened by chance. There's actually a creator. There's someone that designed this, and that is what it means by intelligent design. It was designed by somebody. But they claim, the evolutionists claim that no, even as complex as it is, it's possible that it all came into existence. There's an idea that is known to most human races, people that have common sense, that if something is too good to be true, it's probably not true or not too good. One of them has to be wrong over there. I'm sure everyone here has got the email from the Nigerian prince, Kubele, Prince Nigeria from Kubele. You know what I'm talking about? The guy who says, listen, I have $10 million, I need to give it. I don't know why this guy has a different accent than Nigerian, but pretend I gave a Nigerian accent. And he's like, I have $20 million, I need to get rid of it right now. Can you please send me your social, your address, so I could give it to you and you'll take 15% and it'll work for both of us. Now, granted, apparently this worked for some people because people were like, wow, I just hit the jackpot. Have the person ever stopped to wonder, like, where did he get my email from? Like, how did he contact? Out of all the people in America, where did he get my email? And now, if something is too good to be true, that all you got to do is just send him some information, it's probably not true. It's probably a problem. So, when you look at evolution, the statistical probability of it happening is so small that don't you think if it's like, there may be other answers to that question. Things that are too good to be true, you have to really start thinking about it. Now, according to the evolution theory, if it's something that's so improbable and yet you're claiming it to be true, shouldn't you stop for a second and think, you know what? Maybe it's not true. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But just maybe there's something wrong with this situation. There's something that we're going to speak about today. B'ezras Hashem, hopefully I'll speak about this really, a little bit. And by the way, this class is very interrelated to the evolution class because it's the two ends of the opposite. There's something called irreducible complexity, which evolution, there's always an argument between the creationists and the evolutionists. So the creationists are people that believe that there was a creation. Evolutionists believe that everything came from nothing. So the creationists say that there's something called irreducible complexity, which means is the way that evolution works, and we're not really going to speak a lot about evolution, is that you have one mutation. If it's favorable, it stays, and you have so on and so forth, more mutations as they go on. So now, when you have a mutation, then it makes sense that you go into the next mutation, and the next mutation, and the next mutation. Now, what happens if in order for something to work, you don't need one mutation, you need a tremendous amount of mutations. So an idea of this is something called blood clotting. Blood clotting means, if you ever realize, if God forbid you cut yourself, and I don't mean you cut yourself like you're cutting yourself, I mean you accidentally cut yourself. If you cut yourself, and what's stopping all the blood to just like leak out? There is something called, your body deals with a biochemical mechanism called blood clotting. What it does is that it connects together, and it's like, everyone will like hold hands really tight, and all the blood, the cells, they hold their hands together, and they'll be like, no exit over here, please, keep on going. This is not an exit. This just go around. What does it go around? Go collect $200. So it sort of congeals. It sort of connects together, and it sort of like puts a stop on that hole. Now, granted, if that hole is very big, it's not going to be able to. You could actually bleed to death. But that is the idea. Now, in order for this process to work, it has to have not just one mutation. There is a bunch of different biochemical mechanisms that there's so many chemical reactions that have to take place at the same time simultaneously in order for it to work. So the question that the creation asks is, I don't understand. He says, if you're saying it's one mutation after another, here we need like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mutations, that with all these mutations by themselves will mean nothing, but together they work as a unity in order to blood clot. So the question is, how does that work? It doesn't make sense in mutations. Now, of course, the evolution answer back that evolution is not linear, but we're not going into the back and forth of things. But the idea is that the science world believes in something like this, that just because we don't understand something yet doesn't mean we won't understand something later. It's called emunah and bitachon in science. I don't think they use that verbiage, but something along those lines. Now, the idea behind it is, if you think about it, ancient Greeks, they used to ask, like, how does the world not fall down? We know, if you take this, take something that doesn't weigh as much, you take this, you drop it, it's going to fall down. Yeah, now we know that we can calculate the speed, we can calculate all that information. The question that they ask is, how come the world doesn't fall down? Why isn't the world constantly falling? So the answer is a very intelligent answer, is that there's someone holding up the world. And the ancient Greeks believed that there's a God, and this God holds up the world. And why doesn't the God fall? Good question. Because the God is a god and is not related to natural, occurrences. So that is, and they named this god that, I believe it was Atlas. So he said, until we figured out how the solar system works, how everything works, then we figured out what the answers for everything. Just like now, we don't have the answers for everything, but B'ezrat Hashem, we'll have the answers for stuff. Is their belief in it? There is a very famous philosopher by the name of Dr. Antony Flew. He was a very, very avid atheist. Like, he wrote books on atheism. That's when you're like, that's when you can call yourself, chashuv, when you write books, you put the stuff into print. And he put many, many books on atheism. And at the tender age, the young age of 81, he decided that he's going to renounce his atheism. And it wasn't because he died. Generally people are atheists until they die, right? And look, we spoke about it last time, and they're like, look at that, there is another world. Surprise, surprise. And in any case, so he actually was still alive, and he revoked his atheism. He asked for his membership, fees back, and he says, I'm no longer an atheism. And I want to actually quote some. Now, what made somebody, after 81 years of being an atheist, all of a sudden stop? And he goes like this. He says, the argument to intelligent design, and I'm quoting, is enormously stronger than it was when I first met it. It is now seems to me that the findings of more than 50 years of DNA research have provided materials for a new and enormously powerful argument of design. You know what changed his mind from becoming an atheist to believer? Something called intelligent design. It makes no sense. When you look at the world, you look at how it works, you look at how awesome it is, it doesn't make any sense that it just came from nothing. So, you guys heard of Isaac Newton? One of the most famous scientists ever, ever, period. So now, he was a believer in God, and he actually even studied Judaism. That's what they say. They say he actually studied, he wasn't Jewish, he studied Judaism. And he had a atheist friend, I don't know if that's correct English. He had a friend who was an atheist. Now, this atheist one time came over to his, study, and he saw that Isaac Newton had this magnificent model of the planetary systems. So he had, like the sun and the planets are orbiting around it, and the moons are orbiting around the planets. Everything was so miraculous, and the guy's looking at him, he's like, this is amazing. Who did this? And Isaac Newton says, oh, you think this is amazing? There's a little lever. Why don't you turn around that lever? And the atheists started turning around the lever, and everything started moving. The moon started turning around each other, the planets started orbiting around the sun, and he's like, this is unbelievable. He says, who created this masterpiece? So, Newton said, it's a funny story. I had a bunch of these material, and they all just sort of fell, crashed, and they came into this magnificent thing. And the atheist was he's like, are you kidding me? He's like, what do you mean? He says, this whole magnificent structure, this all came from nothing? And he's like, yeah, isn't it crazy? It's so crazy. What's the probability, right? And he's like, you got to be kidding. There's no way that this magnificent creation came from nothing. So Isaac Newton goes over to his atheist friend, and he says, you don't believe that it came from nothing, but the whole world, he points up, he says, this world, this so magnificent world, you believe that this came from nothing? So, the idea that we're going to be speaking about is, the idea is of design. And here's also a good example, just to get, before we actually even get started on this. You're walking in the desert, you're walking in, somewhere, you're walking in the forest, and you see two stones together, very nicely, metrically aligned. Are you going to think that there was a person there that put these two stones together? Now, maybe yes, maybe not. I could equally say that it's very probable that it just so happens to be the stones were equally aligned. Very likely. Now, let's say it's 3 stones. Still, I'll give it likely. Now, what happens if you see the stones piled up in a tower? Now, I remember when in this past summer, I went hiking with my wife. Very recommended for married couples to spend time with their wives. And so we went on a hike. And it was a huge place for this, it was like a, I don't even know what you call it. It was a huge place that you go hiking. And what I know, it was so, I don't ever understand the hiking trails, because they mark it off with this marker, a black line over here. I'm like, I have to have the magnifying glass to find this black line, to know where, and it's in 50 yards, you'll see the next black line. And you're looking, where is this black line? And this was a place that very easily you could just get lost off the path. And I saw something very interesting. I don't know what this is called. I don't know why people do this, but I saw rocks piled one after another. I don't know if it's called stacking or something. People, I've spoken this about before to people, and they were like, yeah, that makes sense. It's a thing people do. They'll take rocks. It's very interesting because this place had a lot of flat rocks. So I saw there was a flat rock, and it was a pile. It could be 10, 12 rocks, one on top of another. Now, when I look at that, do I be like, wow, that's there was a hurricane here, and it just so pulled that together? And I'm like, no, not even for a second. I knew that somebody was there and put the rocks on top of each other. I didn't know why. I kind of wanted to do it also, but I didn't. But it kind of makes you wonder, like, somebody must have been here, which means I'm not that off, the track. So when you see that, you're starting to think, there's a little bit of design in here. Must be that someone was there. Now let's say I'm traveling in the desert for some godforsaken reason. I don't know why. I'm in the desert and I find there a watch. Not only a watch, I find a smartwatch. Do I think, I'm like, well, this is sick. It has the same name as like Samsung on it also. The desert must have had, like a crazy windstorm, had all the materials in here, and voila, created a watch. No, you don't think for a second. And let's say there's juice in it. There's still juice on the watch. You think that somebody must have been here recently. The idea behind this is very, very simple. You see something with design, aka humans or anything else that you could look at around your life. It's like you start thinking, okay, there must be a designer towards it. We see this in Tehillim, in chapter 19. Verse 2, it says, "Hashemayim mesapim kvod elu ma'aseh yadav magid al-kia," meaning that the handiwork of God speaks to His presence. You look into the world, you can see God. You can look into the world, you cannot see God. You always have the free will to it. But if you open your eyes, you really will see God. I want to present some information on the. We're going to be dealing a little bit in the science realm of things. Now, I want to be very, very clear. I'm going to say things like, how does this exist? And how does this happen? This is like a disclaimer. We all know, most of us will know, some of us will know, few of us will know, at least, how things happen. In the science world, you can know how things happen. My question, even though I'm going to say how, my focus is, and keep this in mind, it's not the how, it's the why of things. Like we know how trees are made. We know the science behind it. But let's take it a step. Let's go out of the box for a second and ask why. Why does it happen the way that it is? You ever have an argument with somebody, hopefully it's not your spouse, and you're saying, why are you the way that you are? Right? That's when you're done. That's when the argument is over, and especially if you're a man, the question is why is it the world the way that it is? Let's ask that on the world, if we may, for a second. Now, I heard this from Rabbi Shmuel Waldman. I'm going to change it around a little bit. But, think of it, the scenario like this. There was a person who was blind and deaf from birth. And then somehow, miraculously, not important how, he got cured, he was able to hear, he was able to see. Let's say, for argument's sake, he was 20 years old, his name is Sam, you're his tour guide on the world, you're going to show him around the world. Now, before you are his tour guide, he learned some basic stuff. He learned English, he learned language, he learned colors, he learned all the basic stuff. And you come out, and you're like, hi Sam, my name is... fill in your name, and he goes in and you say, let me show you just the basic stuff. You get outside, he looks outside, and the first thing that he sees is a tree, and he's like, whoa, he's like, what's that? So he says, well, Sam, this is a tree, and he's like, who made it? And you say, like, no, this is nature made it. So he says, but how did nature make it? So, you took some science courses, so you know a little bit about something. And you say, listen, there is something called a seed. And you take a little seed and you say, this seed, you put it into the earth, and you show them the earth, this is the earth. And you put some water, you show them some water. And you have some sunlight, you show them the sun. Don't look too much on it, you just got healed. You go look at the sun. And all these four things create this magnificent creation. And he's like, okay, hold up 1 second. He's like, this feels solid. He points at the wood. He's like, what's this called? He's like, this is wood. So you're like, okay, I see the earth, I see the water, I see the seed, I see the sun. Where's the wood? He says, how did the earth make the wood? Or how did the seed make the wood? The seed is just so tiny. How did it come into the wood? So he says, and then he stops for a second. He says, maybe it was the earth. And he starts picking up the earth and he plays with it. And let's pause that story for a second. Imagine you take a huge pot and you fill it up with 1,000 pounds of earth, and you plant a tree in it, and you plant the seed. Everything, it grows to a magnificent, beautiful tree. You come back 15 years later, you see this beautiful tree. Let's say you take the tree out and you weigh the earth. How much earth do you think is still in there? Roughly, it's going to be 1,000 pounds. Which brings you to the question. There's about a few ton tree over here that grew, and the earth is the same. The water is insignificant compared to the amount of tree that you have over here. The sun is not giving off anything that's physical to the tree. Where did the wood come from? Very good question. Have you ever thought about it? If not, good time to think about it. So think of it like this way. Think of it as somebody coming over to you and gives you a paper, as much paper as you want, as much paper clips as you want, and as much staples as you want. And he says, please build me a car. And be like, I even if you know how to build a car, I'm like, I don't have enough material over here to build a car. Where is the material to build this tree? So he goes and he says, listen, this is nature, this is how it builds, it goes up, stop asking me difficult questions. Like a little kid, like, like, Daddy, where does the sun come from? The sun comes from, it's in the outer space, and you mumble some words, throw some big words in a photosynthesis, and then you say, okay, where do the clouds come from? The clouds come from the ocean, and then eventually they ask questions, you'd be like, stop asking questions! Go ask your mother. So, which is, by the way, it is important to add, never say that to your child. Always answer the questions. And it's always okay to say, I don't know. You don't have to know every answer. It's better to say, I don't know, than give him a false answer. So there's a little magician that sits behind the sun, and it's just a wand very far away. So now, going back to Sam, did we say his name was Sam? His name was Sam. Okay, we did say his name was Sam. So this Sam goes and he says, this is magnificent. And then he looks and he sees this like green things that are hanging from the branches, from the wood. And he looks at it and he's like, this is so unbelievable. Who glued all these things to the tree? And he's like, do you mean the leaves? He's like, yeah, like who glued it? But no, these leaves come from the tree. And he looks at the tree, he's like, knocks in, he's like, this is pretty solid. He says, how does something like that come out from something solid? It doesn't make any sense to me. So you answer something again, nature. And then you go on and be like, you know what, you remember something called photosynthesis. From high school or college, and you say, there's something called photosynthesis. What happens is that the water goes into the roots, and then it travels up the tree, and he stops. He's like, whoa, what happened to gravity? He says, how does the water climb up the tree? So you mumble something about, cohesion therapy, whatever, don't worry about it, it just gets up there. And, he says, let me tell you the parts that I know. And he goes up and he says, the photosynthesis is something very interesting. It goes into, the water goes up and gets into the leaves. And when the sun hits the leaves, it activates a chemical reaction because of there's a certain, thing in the tree called chlorophyll. And now this chlorophyll, what it does is it takes water. Water, as we all know, is H2O, is 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. And what it does is it separates the hydrogen and the oxygen. So you have the hydrogen says over here, and the oxygen is something very cool. The leaves have little holes called pores, and it just lets the oxygen out. What's interesting is that us humans and every animal life, we need the oxygen. So we breathe in this oxygen. And so Sam asked you, so what happens with the hydrogen that's stuck in the, in the tree? Good thing that you ask, because I know this answer too. And you go on and you say that when humans breathe out, we breathe out carbon dioxide. We breathe in oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide. What this tree does, the leaves takes in the carbon dioxide, it attaches it with the 2 hydrogen atoms in there, and it produces a simple sugar. And this is what gives it energies to survive. And what's miraculous about this whole thing is that we need the trees to survive, the trees need us to survive, and everybody needs the sun to survive. So Sam goes and says, this is unbelievable. So who designed this? This is something magnificent. Who designed it? So no, this is just, this is how nature works. This is how, things work in this world. So then he goes and he says, okay, what are those green little balls hanging from the trees? So he says, those are oranges, actually. So Sam says, listen, I just learned my colors, And I said, that's green, that's not orange. He says, why does it look orange? So you explain to him and you say, listen, the orange starts off green, and when it's ready, it turns into orange, so that you know that it's ready. So he's like, wow, that's crazy. He's like, oh no, that works in everything. Like a banana is also going to be green, but when it's ready, it turns into, the color is yellow. So he's like, who goes around and paints all these oranges and bananas the right colors? So he says, no one paints it. This is just how it happens. So he says, thank you. So he says, I don't understand. He says, this just happens by itself. And you go and you pull off. You don't pull off. You look at a banana tree. Now, assuming this is a very short banana tree, you can just grab it. And you say, grab a banana. And it's not ripe yet. You know what happens if you could try to grab a banana that's not ripe? Try to pull it off. Even you buy in the grocery, what is it called? A cluster of bananas? I don't know what the right terminology of it. A gang, a posse of bananas, an entourage of bananas, right? And you go over there and you try to break one off. If it's not ripe, it's very difficult to break one off. The second that it's ripe, all of a sudden it becomes easy. Now what happened? That banana got weaker. Like, oh, it's dying, I'm so weak. Now you can take it off. Like, what happened all of a sudden that, no, first it's strong, it doesn't want to do it, and then it all of a sudden takes it off. Now let's say you try to peel it when it's unripe. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to peel. The peel still sticks to it, and it's very, very difficult. What makes it all of a sudden, not only the color change, but also the characteristic of the banana, the orange, all the fruits, they change when they're ready. Who decided that all of a sudden it's going to be ready? Very interesting. No one ever thinks about it. Now, even if you want to go and you want to try to eat something that's not ready, that's not ripe yet, it's very unhealthy for you. It could cause you a stomach ache. So you think about it, like, look at this. It's almost as if someone designed it, and to tell you, hey, it's not ready yet. How am I going to tell you it's not ready yet? It's going to be very difficult for you to pick it off the tree. And if you do pick it off the tree, it's going to be very difficult to peel it. And even if you do peel it, it's not even going to taste as good. So it's almost as if someone's telling you, hey, not ready yet. You play hide and seek, when you're 4, 5, 6, 17 years old. And you go and you say, ready or not? No, not ready, right? So you got to count to another 100 Mississippis, until people try to figure out the hiding places that they, and by the way, you know what? Let's not get into hide and seek. All right. So now, you go and you say, Sam goes to you and says, listen, he says, I understand you keep on telling me the word nature. Come on, it's got to look like someone designed this. This is like, there's a lot of intricate things into this. And he takes an orange and he starts opening it up, assuming he never ate an orange before. He takes an orange, it opens up, all of a sudden it starts leaking. He's like, oh, it's bleeding. He's like, I don't know what to do with this. And you're like, no, that's just the juice of the orange. It's called orange juice. And you start explaining to him, this is actually a very sweet juice. People buy it, and it's beautiful. It's amazing. It tastes amazing. And he says, I don't understand something. He says, the water comes in clear. How does it come in sweet and orange all of a sudden? So, and then he opens up the orange, he peels it off, and he opens up the orange, and he looks at it, and he's like, look at that. Somebody went and individually wrapped every drop of orange juice. They went and they wrapped it in there. Have you ever looked at an orange before you're gobbling down your mouth like you know how Americans eat? Oh, Cookie Monster. That's how we eat. We eat, like this. Fast food is not just in fast food places. Americans just eat fast. Well, see, that's why we speak this class. So. And you go and you tell them, no one wrapped it. This is just how it happened. By the way, if you ever think about it, you know how expensive it would be to commercially produce an orange? You have to wrap every piece of juice in a little, different thing. Why just create a bowl of juice, like slurp it up like a good alien trying to eat a bowl of whatever. You think about it, we don't appreciate what we have over here. So he's looking at the orange and he's like, I got it. He says, I knew there was a maker to this orange, and I found the maker to this orange. He put his signature right on the orange. And you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. No, there's no signature on the orange. He's like, over here. He says, I know the maker. His name is the Holy Sunkist. Sticker is right here. And he's like, no. He's like, that's just a company that has the orange orchards. Now, when you think about this for a second, do we ever, one of the reasons that I decided, and you should know, that I was contemplating on giving this class or not, because I could have thrown this class in evolution in like 15 minutes. Know the appreciation of the world, yada yada, give a few quick examples about the brain, the eye, or maybe something else, and Shalom Ali Yisrael, we could have moved on. And then I was thinking about, is that one of the main reasons that I decided to give this class is not only to show the idea of intelligent design, but also to show the idea of appreciation. Do we ever for a second stop before you eat a fruit and you're like, God, you're awesome? Right? Yeah. I don't know if you... Some people do that. Well, it's good. Now everybody should do that. Yeah, that's what we do, called the brachot.
Eyes in the morning is a miracle.
That is. But before you eat something natural, you look at it, think about it for a second. You have an apple over here. Think about the apple. Think of it, why does it have a protective layer? Why does it have the seeds inside? Why are the seeds of everything slippery? Why is it slippery? You ever try to pick a watermelon seed from a thing? You're like, let's go over there. You're like collecting things over here. It doesn't move. A very important thing is because it should slip out of your mouth and fall into the ground so it could plant other things. You ever stop for a second and think about stuff? Just think about the world. Okay? It's so important to think. It's so important to think. You look at a spider. After you jump in the chair and scream, right? So you're looking at a spider, right? And you ever wonder how a spider makes a web? You ever wonder, stop for a second and think okay, if you look at a spider web, how did you get from here to there? You have a right angle. How, there's some things that just brings you to question. You have a web, but how did you get to the other part of it? Did you swing? Were you like getting in and all of a sudden, one of your 8, you finally got something? And it's something very interesting because a spider, the weavers actually study spiders to learn about weaving. Spiders don't have to go to the spider class and be like, hey guys, okay, today we're going to learn the intricate web of like in and out. And, so you go in, you go out, you got to make sure they just know it right away. How? Mutations. Okay, but it's something very interesting because spiders, they have a liquid that's secreted from their abdomen through organs called spinnerets, and when this liquid comes into contact with air, all of a sudden miraculously it turns to the strongest organic fiber known into the world. How and why? How we might know, but why? Why does that happen? Not only that, there was once a scientist that wanted to see how much spider thread he could pull out of it. And he was pulling it and pulling it. He got up to 450 feet until he got tired. The spider was still okay. He was like, well, that's it. He couldn't hear him because the spider was very small and didn't speak English. But the idea is that he could have gone more, and he unfortunately didn't. We have to stop for a second and look at the creation. Look at the magnificent creation, and for 1 minute a day at least, tell God, thank you, God. You walk out in the street, it's going to be freezing, right? So you're like covered up in this. You look at a tree for a second, you'd be like, this is awesome. This tree is surviving in like brutal New York weather. No matter, but it's going to come back together. Just stop for a second and say, thank you, God. Imagine this idea, and this is why the whole idea of atheism, and again, it's a very broad idea. Why it bothers me so much is like, you got to be grateful. You got to be grateful in life. Like, don't you got to look around? Imagine somebody goes, you never met this person in your life, and he goes, or she goes, and gives you a job. And you get this job, and not only do they give you a job, every so often you get huge raises. And not only that, you're about to get fired, they jump in, you never met this person, you never spoke to this person before, and they make sure you don't get fired. And then raises, not fired. Raises, because you're obviously a lazy worker, so we know it's one after another. So, and you're like, not fired, raises. And not only you're not getting fired, you're getting raises, you're getting better, more vacation days, everything is amazing. Now, there's like, 10th anniversary of you being there. The company honors you as being the worst employee, but they call you being the best employee for some reason. And you come out there to, in your speech, and you say it was through hard work and perseverance that I reached to where I am today, and all of you can do it today. Now imagine that guy is sitting, who gave you everything over here, is sitting in the audience, and he's like, are you kidding me? It's like, this guy didn't do anything. He's sitting, he doesn't even work. I was like, I arranged everything for him, and he doesn't even appreciate me, when he gives his 1 in 10 year speech. You ever think about that? God gives us, and gives us, and gives us, and gives us, and then gives us to more to infinity. And we stop for a second and think, well, maybe there's no God. Do you open your eyes in the world and see what the world is? Let's look for a second at the human body. And by a second, I mean for a little bit more than a second. Okay, so now, the human body works together with so many intricate parts that has to work together in order to achieve the purpose and stay alive. You have the nerve cells, which convey information. You have the cardiac cells, which keep the heart pumping. You have the cells that fight germs, the digestive cells, the reproductive cells, the glands, the respiratory system. You have the systems after systems that all work together in unity to try and make sure that you're okay. Now, when you look at something that is very complex and very difficult to understand, the human brain. Let me give you some facts on the human brain to show you about the idea and such a beautiful design that really points to an intelligent design. First of all, the blood vessels that are present in the brain, you know how many blood vessels you have? Over 100,000 miles. If you connect all the blood vessels in your brain, it would be more than 100,000 miles. That is more, imagine getting to the moon, that's very far, right? That will take you halfway to the moon. That's how much brain cells you have in your little brain. And I say little, really, it's a small, ideal. It's a small object compared to all your other, parts of your body. There are 100 billion neurons present in your brain. That is a lot of neurons present in your brain. In early pregnancy, the neurons develop at an alarming rate of 250,000 per minute, all by nature and accident. Your brain, you think, is like full of like just blood vessels. No, it's 73% water. In your brain, 73% water. Your whole brain weighs about 3 pounds. And each neuron of those 100 billion neurons can transmit 1,000 nerves impulses per second. And by the way, you should know something, that when your brain when you see an image, it can process it for as little as 13 milliseconds. That's all it needs, and your brain already can process the information. You have the brain is also composed of 60% fat. You think like this brain is it's 60% fat. 2% of the whole body weight is the brain. 20% of all the energy goes to the brain. Now, who told it that it needs so much energy? Like, weird? Like, how did that system work? Now, again, we know the how. When I say how, I really mean the why. Every minute, you have about a liter of blood that flows to the brain. A liter is like, is that soda bottle a liter? I think that soda bottle is a liter. Is that a liter? That's what goes to your brain every single minute. Every single minute, that's the amount of liquid that goes through your brain. If a blood supply in the brain would stop after 8 to 10 seconds, you would start losing consciousness. So this is something constant, not just like, every so often when it's in the mood, 9 to 5, it works. It works 24 hours a day, 90, 100, 120 years, non-stop. This is unbelievable. The brain would not be able to survive if it's left with 5 or 6 minutes without any oxygen. The size of a grain of sand, which is very small, try cleaning sand out of your shoes when you get sand. Just one little tiny grain of sand contains 100,000 neurons and 1 billion synapses, which are all communicating with each other. And not only that, all brain cells are not alike. You have as many as 10,000 specific types of neurons in your brain. Does this begin to wonder, like, maybe somebody did something over here? By chance? The brain information travels at a speed of 268 miles per hour. Formula One race cars, which I hope none of you knows what that is, which is a very fast car. Let's just leave it at that. Travels at 240 miles per hour. These information is traveling at 268 miles per hour. What about your brain storage capacity? You ever think about, like, what happens if, storage full, that's it, like, no more information, you got to clear out the data, clear out your cache, you got to just either insert more memory or you're done. How much memory does your brain have? So, according to science, it's virtually unlimited. But there was a latest research that showed that the capacity is a quadrillion, which is 10 to the 15 bytes, which, if you don't know any computer terms, a lot. How much a lot? Imagine fitting the entire internet in your brain. That's a lot. Everything that exists on the internet in your brain. That you're able to store all that information. Now, all we need to do is figure out how to put that information in our brain. The question is, would you do that?
I don't want all the stuff in it.
There you go. There's where I was going to with that. The human brain is 30 times more powerful than IBM Sequoia, which is the world's fastest supercomputer, one of the world's fastest supercomputer. Japan's K computer, which is also one of the most powerful computers, when it was programmed to stimulate human brain activity, it took 40 minutes to go through the data, what it would take 1 second of the brain to go through. 1 second, 40 minutes of the most powerful supercomputer in the world. And when I mean powerful supercomputer in the world, I don't mean that you're getting the top-of-the-line cell phone. I'm talking about a supercomputer that you're not able to buy. It's exists in certain realms of high class government officials. On average, let me ask you this: how many thoughts do you think you have per day? 1,000? Over 70,000 thoughts that you have per day. Well, it's true. Man is probably closer to the 1,000. A woman is probably closer to that. All this is all that's going on in your brain. Now, while this is all going on in your brain, you are able to sense all the colors around you. You're able to smell all the smells around you. You're able to sense the temperatures all around you. The temperatures can be different in your body. You can be cold in your feet, and you can be hot in your core. You can be cold in your arms and hot in your feet. Everything is registered in the thing. The pressure. You ever think about the pressure? You realize that every part of your body has a pressure sensor, which means is if someone just goes like this, you already feel it. You know what it is? Every single part of your body. If you put on your socks in the morning and you have a tiny pebble, you feel it. Like, why would you feel that? It's so insignificant. You're typing on the keyboard and there's one little, here that you would feel that. You feel everything. All the pressures are all relate to the brain. While all this is happening, you're registering all the sounds around you. While you're registering that you have a dry mouth and you think, maybe I need a drink. Good gateway. All this, you also have your emotions that you're dealing with, because all the emotions depends on how you're going to respond to different, stimuli that happens in your day. Are you going to be upset about the same thing? Or are you going to be happy about the same thing? You realize, by the way, in your day, if the thing that's going to happen to you, the way that you take it is based on the emotions that you have at that given point in time. Something very easy to tell this in the relationships. Something, if you're in a good mood, it's not going to bother you that your spouse is doing it. All of a sudden, you're in a bad mood, it bothers you. Who is organizing that whole system to do that? I mean, it's your brain. For women, it's a big part of the brain. I'm just kidding. It's for everybody. So, besides all this, you also have your thoughts. Your thoughts are constantly... Now, the brain is not focusing on one thing at a time. Now, as a man, we all know the men think of one thing at a time. Women, right, you guys can think of like a manifesto of things at the same time. You never ask a woman what she's thinking about because you need to scroll over there and be like, well, I'm thinking about what am I doing, and then how am I going to design a house, how am I going to have my babies, how am I going to do them, what am I going to do that? I'm like, but you're 6 years old, you know? Anyways, so... Besides that, you're also going and you also have your memories, your previous memories. And after all that, you're breathing. You ever think about it? You don't have to say, breathe out. Okay, breathe in. Breathe out. Oh, breathe in. This all happens subconsciously. You know how much stuff happens subconsciously? You have in your brain over 1 million messages per second. And not only that, the brain does something very amazing. It filters. It's a filtering system. You realize, like right now, there's a lot of noise that's going around. I guarantee you, and 99% of you did not hear one train since you came in here. You know the train is right over here. You should have heard it.
I did.
You heard it?
Yes.
99%, so I'm still good. 1%, assuming we had 100 people here. Okay, then my math would work out. Yeah. You don't hear the train. Some people may or may not hear the fan. You may or not hear people that's talking down the hall. You may not hear people, the cars that are driving outside. You may not hear people chewing, eating, depending. Some people will hear that. But there's so many sounds that are going around, and we just take it. We don't hear it. Why? Because our brain filters it. You know, this is in some autistic people, the filtering system doesn't work that way. Someone once sent me a clip on how an autistic kid walks through a mall. And they walk through the mall and they hear everything. You don't hear just your mother's voice right over here. You hear 1,000 voices. You hear gates. You hear everything. And that's why they're like this, because there's so much stimuli that's going in that the brain is not filtering it out. Now, I don't know if that's how autistic works, but when the brain is not filtering it out, it could be. So the brain is not filtering it out. Imagine how much of a blessing it is that the brain is filtering out all this information. I'll tell you something so amazing. This is so amazing only nowadays. We have something that is called a cell phone. Now, if a cell phone vibrates, doesn't matter, it's a class, doesn't matter, it's, the high holidays, God forbid you have the second a cell phone, everyone takes out the cell phone. Someone important is a message to me. I'm important. Phantom vibration. Yeah. So the second you have a vibrate, and this is an example. We have a few cell phones on the table. Next time that there's a vibration, I'm saying it right now, this is how much the experiment is going to work. The next time that there's going to be a vibration, you hear like, on the table, look how many people are going to look at their phone. Someone important is, I'm so important, who's calling me right now? I'm so important, who's, and you go and look, because I can't wait for like 20 minutes until after, So, but there's something very interesting. So, everybody has their own ringtones, especially nowadays, they make custom ringtones. And, I still remember in the olden days when like something came out, it's called your phone ringing. I don't know if they still have it right now. Your phone ring. It's like this African-American guy telling you that your phone is ringing. So everyone has his own personalized ringtone. Now, you ever realize something? You could be doing something and concentrating. Somebody else's phone is ringing, and it's not your ringtone. You don't hear it. You don't hear it. It's there, but you don't hear it. All of a sudden, the same distance, the phone is right next to each other. Your phone is ringing. All of a sudden, you hear it. How did that happen?
Same ringtone?
Different ringtone. Different ringtone. All of a sudden, your brain recognizes and be like, okay, that ringtone, don't need to do it. Filter it out. We don't need it. This ringtone, I know this is important. Send messages. All systems go, stop whatever you're doing, get the phone, we need to see what's happening right now. Where did the brain get that information to do that? Where is this amazing, filtering system? It's something, and you should realize that your brain is able to take everything. There, in certain high, let's say CIA, Mossad, like those type of FBI, in order to get to certain training areas, they do certain tests. Those tests are that you have to walk into a room, and you have about 4, 5, 6 seconds. You look around the room, you got to leave the room. And then you get tested about the room. How many males were in the room? How many females were in the room? How many of the females were wearing heels? How many of the males were wearing hats? How many chairs were in the room? How many lights were in the room? How many lights were off? How many lights were on? They ask you the craziest questions that you think about, it's not possible. But if you train yourself, your brain has all this information. You just go around like that, your brain collected all that information. If you are able to concentrate, you're able to focus on this, you're able to remember all that information. There are people that use this information through hypnosis. If, let's say, somebody was by a crime scene. And they go and they just, everything came out and they couldn't remember everything. Some police, academies, they use, I don't know how popular this is, but they'll put them through hypnosis. And be like, can you describe the suspect to me? Can you describe exactly how he looked? And when they say, I can't understand, but also they put them through hypnosis, the brain sees everything. The brain can count. If you're traveling you're driving on a highway, the brain already knows how many trees you pass by. Now you're not sitting there and counting all the trees, until you lose it. But the brain has all that information inside you. It's all stored inside, but the brain has something called a filtering system. How? Nature. Wow, so beautiful, right? Isn't this some mutations, right? It's unbelievable. So you think about it, like your brain doesn't have a designer. In 1953. 2 people by the name of James Watson and Francis Crick discovered something called deoxyribonucleic acid, otherwise known as, aka street name, DNA. Right? So DNA is a chain of chemicals that are found in every human cell. Now DNA contains an exact blueprint of every physical detail in you, including your toe prints, your skin, your fingerprints, your heart size, your shape. Everything is in that DNA. Now Dr. Michael Denton, an Australian microbiologist, he says that the capacity of storage for DNA is so vast. He says that if you were to put all the species in the world in the same storage capacity of the DNA, you would be able to fit everything on a teaspoon. All the species in the world, all that information, you could fit it on the teaspoon, and you'll still have room on the teaspoon for all the books ever written. Now, you're all women over here, so you know what a teaspoon is. But for the men, the teaspoon is the smaller spoon, not the larger spoon. So it's the smaller spoon. You're able to fit all the information in that. That's how vast this information, is. Think of the DNA as a computer program. Computer programs work by ones and zeros, right? So you have these binary systems that they work by 1 and zeros. Now, DNA has similar to a 1 and 0, but instead of 1 and 0, there are made of 4 chemicals that scientists abbreviated as A, T, G, and C. And in every cell, you have 3 billion of these letters in every cell, combining these the formula for all basically your program. Bill Gates, whoever doesn't know Bill Gates, but if you don't know about Bill Gates, he was the founder of Microsoft. If you don't know about Microsoft, I can help you. DNA is like a software. He says like this: DNA is like a software program, only much more complex than anything we've ever devised. So you look at something like a DNA, and this is what that we spoke about before. That Dr. Flew. This is the one that This is what changed his mind about this is so complex. How is it possible that it came from nothing? There must be a creator in the world. I apologize. I know it's getting late. I'm going to do my usual announcement. If you got to go, it's okay. Please feel free. But we still have some more information we need to get through. Let's look at the eye for a second. The eye is the most complex organ after the brain. It is composed of 2 million working parts. 80% of our memories are determined by what we see. And you should know 39 million people are blind. Did we ever stop for a second and think about, 39 million people are blind. Do you ever stop for a second to think about, oh my gosh, I got something stuck in my eye? And we do all the things, that of course are science, you can look down and you spit, real scientific information. And, when you're coughing, you pick up your hands. This is like scientific information that you grab. I heard on the radio that if you do this, it's going to make you better. So you ever stop for a second and appreciate the fact that you're able to see? And not only that, the fact that you're able to see color? You ever, I'm a man, so, when I look at something like this red chair, I call it a red chair. You might call it, burgundy red, rose, magenta. I don't know what I remember one time I was with my daughter, and I was, she was young, and we were very young, and we were speaking about colors. And I was like, what color is this? And she's like, magenta. And I'm like, that's not a color, sweetheart, it's red. And she's like, no, it's magenta. I know, my wife told me. I'm like, you ever realize and appreciate, us as men, we can't, I could speak for myself. I don't see rose, wine, or cherry. Which one? I'm like, am I making a salad? What are we doing over here? Why are we looking at colors and we're talking about food? I'm like, I really don't understand. By the way, you realize your eye is able to discern a difference of 500 different shades of gray. I know gray and black and white. I know one, right? You're able to discern 500 shades of gray. Do you ever appreciate for a second how much gray you're able to appreciate? Just like the fact of just gray. Forget about all the beautiful colors that you see in the universe. Just the gray. Appreciate the gray. An average blink lasts 1/10 of a second. And guess what? There's no thinking involved. And if you start thinking, now watch everybody, everyone's going to start blinking right now. Everyone's going to, because you start concentrating, you don't have to think about the blink. Blinking just happens automatically. Now you're going to see some people are going to refuse to blink. And their eyes are going to get dry, and then they're going to blink again, and then they're going to get it. Now I'm blinking because I'm talking about it. All right. So But if you realize, all this happens without you thinking about it. Isn't this amazing? Do you ever, for a second, imagine every 4 seconds you get an alarm. Blink, all right, blink. Oh, every 1 second, breathe. You know, like you'll be consumed with this. You won't be able to do it. What's your occupation? I breathe and I blink. Professionally, you know. So you blink an average of 4.2 million times per year. If only you could get $1 for every time you blink. Okay, now the fingerprint has 40 unique characteristics in it. And the iris has 256 different characteristics. This is why retina scans are becoming more popular and are being used for security purposes. That if you use for, I believe some phones are, I don't know if it is, or maybe it's facial recognition, but it's more secure if you're able to use, an iris scanning. You have 2 eyes. There was once a comic guy there, Cyclops, is that the right thing? Cyborg, one eye guy, right? The one eye guy, Cyclops. One eye guy be like, wow, that he only needs one eye, super cool. Just the opposite. You have 2 eyes because that gives you the depth of perception. You know how much? If you don't have the depth of perception, it's just a comedy scene, and it's a very sad comedy scene. But it's going to be do we ever appreciate that we have the depth of perception? The eye can distinguish among 7 million colors. I know of about 7. There are 7 million colors that exist, and it's not, you can't make a song up for that, like in the rainbow. There are 7 million colors that your eye can distinguish between, and it has automatic focusing that handles 1.5 million messages simultaneously. That's a lot of messages. Try answering 2 messages simultaneously. 1.5 million. There are 7 million cone-shaped color sensors that they're able to accept this information. Now, if there is insufficient light, you have another 120 million rod-shaped, ultra-sensitive black and white sensors, which switch on by themselves when there's not light, sort of like a night vision. All of a sudden, night vision comes on, and you're able to see better in the night. What happens is that we have an optic nerve that accepts these signals from 127 million sensors and recodes them to more compact signals, and then shoots them down a few 100,000 nerve fibers that lead to our brain at about 1 billion impulses per second. All by accident. Beautiful, no? Okay, if you think about the eye, the brain, can you say for a second that this all happened by accident? Yeah, through mutations. You would need not 1 billion years, not 1 trillion years, not a Google amount of years. It's a number. Yeah, Google it. It is the amount of time that you need to do it, even if you believe in the whole evolution, which I'm not going to, that's fine. You can believe whatever it is that you believe in. How is it possible? Now, when I say how, I mean why. I got to make sure that's, why I say that, because I was giving this class once, and the guy kept on being like, but we know how it happens. I mean, I don't know how it happens, but people know how it happens. And I'm like, I don't mean how, I mean the why. There's something else behind this that has to make sense. Besides this, we have, on both sides of our head, we have something called balance detectors. You ever go, I know drunk people tend to like this game, they'll drink a lot, and then they'll turn around very, very fast, and then they run very far, very fast. Apparently, this is in their mind, this is like a very smart idea. This is gonna be very smart. And you ever realize what happens? All of a sudden, your balance sensors are off. You just like you veer to the right side. You ever drive a car and like there's one tire, just less ear, and all of a sudden you're just like like you keep on turning it, and then you're turning your wheel on an angle. Like, why is it that our bodies are just not like veering to the right? Let's say you use your right hand, you're righty, and your right hand is much stronger, your right foot is stronger. Why don't we just like walk to the right? Why don't we just like tilt to the right? Why do we have balance? Now, some people, do have these balance issues, which we have to be grateful that we have the ability to balance ourselves. You ever think about that for a second? The immune system. You know what the immune system is? We don't have the time to get into all these systems. There's a foreign something that gets into your body. So a bunch of, white blood cells get together and be like, intruder alert, red sound. Now they all come together, the army forms, and attacks this intruder. Now you don't think for a second, but like, oh, wait a minute, I got an intruder somewhere, let me go find it. No, everything happens by itself. You have the respiratory and the circulatory system. You breathe in oxygen. How does the oxygen get into your muscles? It goes through the blood, and you transfer this, and it goes through everywhere. Who told it to do that? It's all happening by itself, miraculously, naturally, however whatever it is you want to use it. The digestive system. You eat something like this. right? Which I'm sure has very little nutritional value, right? I saw sour sticks going around over here before. You look over there, it says wheat inside over there. I have a hard time believing how much wheat is there. How much nutritional value is in this? Yet your body is able to eat this and extract anything that's good and take it, and the bad stuff, put it in a different place. It goes down a different pipe. All by accident. That was close enough. Okay. It's so unbelievable that we don't, think about it. Now that's just the body. Think about the world for a second. If the Earth was smaller, the atmosphere would be impossible. It would be like Mercury. If the Earth was larger, it would be impossible. It would be too much free hydrogen. It would be like Jupiter. So the Earth is only possible in the specific size that it is. Not only that, the Earth spins at 67,000 miles per hour. You get dizzy every so often? Maybe, oh man, the Earth is spinning faster. It doesn't spin fast. It spins always 67,000 miles per hour. Now, why don't we feel it? Of course, we're going to speak about that, B'ezras Hashem, hopefully when we get to Einstein's, theory of relativity, and B'ezras Hashem, we'll speak about that next week. But you ever realize there's so much stuff happening that your brain sort of just like focuses everything? You know that the Earth has to be exactly the right size. 8,000 miles in diameter. If it was 8,000 miles in diameter should put you in perspective on your 100,000 miles of brain, blood vessels that you have in your brain, and how much that is, how much time you could circle, the Earth. If the Earth was 9,500 miles in diameter, this would cause a doubling in the weight of the air. We would have so much oxygen that would turn into the water. We wouldn't have any land. It will turn into water, and we would not be able to exist over here. So we could only exist because the Earth is at its specific size. What happens? The Earth is at a very, neat 93 million miles from the sun. If it would be a little bit closer, we would burn. If it would be a little bit further, we would freeze. Just so happens that all these things just so happen to work so nicely together. You ever wonder how rain comes into the clouds? You ever stop for a second and think like, how is it that rain gets up there and it comes down? Let's make it very brief. It's late. I really have a lot of scientific explanation of this, but it is getting late, so let's try to make it a little brief. You have water vapor. In the ocean, the sun beats down on the ocean, and the water turns into water vapor. It comes up, and things that are less dense rises over things that are more dense. Now, this all of a sudden you have a massive air that quickly cools at its saturation point. It travels up and it turns into clusters. These clusters we call clouds. These clouds all of a sudden from the oceans, they come and they get pushed by the wind into the land, and voila, we have rain, snow, depending on where you live and what's the season. You ever think about like how amazing it is that we can get rain over here? Also, why is the rain not salty like the oceans? Why is the salt staying over there? How does everything work so perfectly? Besides the idea, I really don't have the time to. We're speaking about water, but water is such an amazing. You can't exist without water. There's so many beautiful things about water. The only how uniquely suited it is for life that there's a wide margin between its boiling point and its freezing point. It allows us to through our body. It's something called the universal solvent. Okay, that you have something that is also neutral, that it's able to transport chemicals, it's able to transport nutrients without affecting its chemical makeup. It is something so unbelievable that we cannot exist without it. Miraculously, it just goes and it travels. It comes to us when we need it into the water. There is. Have you ever wondered why ice floats? Anybody ever wonder why ice floats? Why is it less dense than water?
Because it is.
Good answer, because it is. So. Most substances are more dense in their solid form. The more solid they get, the more dense they get. Except for something called water. Water is different, right? We know, of course, it's because hydrogen bonding. We're not going to get into that. The colder that the water gets, the heavier it gets. Yet when it gets cooled down below 4 degrees Celsius, it suddenly becomes lighter. Now why? Why is it that it becomes lighter? So by the way, so you know about this, you have 1 liter of ice weighs less than 1 liter of water, which means is that it would rise. All of a sudden it rises up. You know what? How important this is? You ever think about it for a second? How come the lakes only freeze on top and not on the bottom? You ever think about it that if the lake would freeze on the bottom, the rivers would freeze on the bottom, the fish will all die. Somehow miraculously, this water has a property that it makes the lakes only freeze on top because ice rises, and then it keeps everything else on it's cold, but it's not frozen, and it has the ability for the fish to survive. Kind of cool. We're almost done over here. one of the most important things when you deal about this is that people say nature. People say nature to all these things. So then you can ask a question about nature. Why is nature the way it is? Let's ask the question that we asked before, that you should not ask to your spouse. Why is nature the way that it is? Why is gravity always constant? Why do you know if you have a hot cup of coffee, it's going to become cool if you leave it on the counter? Why is it that the Earth rotates at the space that it rotates? Why do we know that every 24... We can predict when sunrise is, when sunset is. Why is it so mathematical? Why is it so predictable? You ever think about that? It's so reliable. And scientists are very strange. You know, they've been struck about how strange this is. Richard Feynman, a Nobel Prize winner of quantum electrodynamics. Now, if you ask most people what's quantum electrodynamics, they don't know what it is. He's a Nobel Prize winner of something that we don't know what it is. Now, okay, of course we know it's how light and matter interact. But the question is that he says, and I'm going to quote, why nature is mathematical is a mystery. The fact that there are rules is all kind of a miracle. You ever think about it? Why? So you say nature, but why? Why does it all happen so? Stephen Hawking, a theoretical physicist in Cambridge University, wrote in 1988, the whole history of science has been the gradual realization that events do not happen in an arbitrary manner, but they reflect a certain underlying order. Pretend you're a judge for a second, right? You're a judge of a murder case, and the defendant is sitting over there, and the ballistic tests come back that it matches perfectly with the gun that he owns. And he says, Your Honor, I understand that it matches, but it's got to be a different, gun. Even though the chances are 1 in a billion, but it's still possible. It's still possible that maybe it belongs to somebody else. Fine, okay. Then they find out that the defendant's fingerprints are all over the body of the victim. And it says, Your Honor, crazy thing. There's somebody out there that has the exact same fingerprints as me. Is it possible? I mean, it's very unlikely, but it's possible. It's very, very close that it's undiscernible. Yeah, we can say, but I can't say that it's impossible of all the close to 7 billion people we have in the world, and no one has close enough that we can, pick up those, the differences in that. And then, it's possible. And then he says, then eyewitnesses come up, and be like, no, we saw you, So he says, but we saw, we have eyewitnesses. So he says, listen, there's somebody out there who looks exactly like me, who has the same fingerprints as me, and probably the same gun as me. Now, is it possible? Maybe. Is it unlikely? Yes. Can you say it's impossible? Probably more so. Now, when you look at the evidence, are you going to say that this guy is guilty or this guy is innocent? You're going to say this guy is guilty. Why? Because, it's beyond reasonable doubt that you committed it. Granted, it could be, it's there. When you're looking at the world, you have two options. You have nature, you have, natural selection, or you have something called an intelligent a designer. If you're true to yourself, like Dr. Antony flew, words are coming out slurred now. Now, if you're true to yourself, then you're going to start saying, okay, there has to be something over here. There has to be something over here. Now, I want to end off very, very quickly with just, science has a comeback against, fight, win, power. Okay, so now they say intelligent design has no place in science. It's never been used in the study of science. So it's true that it's it's very unscientific to prove something of God. It's very difficult to get into that in that terminology. But intelligent design definitely has been used in science. We look at something called archaeology. Words of English. You look at something called archaeology, right? Now, when they look at rock formation, let's say you have a bunch of square shapes, neatly shaped one after another. What they think about is like, did this happen by nature or did this happen by intelligent design? Now, they're not obviously looking at intelligent design as God created these bricks, but they're thinking about it, maybe humans created these bricks. So we do see that, intelligent design is used in science. Anthropology, you have a sharp pointed rock. Did this come into by itself, or did somebody create this rock to use as a knife or a spear? Forensics, was the cause of death an intelligent design? Was somebody cause the force of death? Or was it a natural circumstance? Search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Are these radio waves, by chance? Or is this intelligent beings that are sending these things out? The Scientific American brings out another point. Sometimes you think the most prestigious scientific journal out there could come out with something so come on, man. Like, really? Like, you have a reputation to stick to. So they had a thing called bad design. Bad design, the title of this is If Humans Were Built to Last. This was presented that if humans were really created by God, why do we have something called bad design? There's bad design stuff. And they use an example called the esophagus. The esophagus, so we know that you have, when you eat something, if it's food, which is what you should be only eating, goes down your esophagus. Now, the way that your esophagus goes is that you have one pipe that sort of branches out into the trachea and to the esophagus. The esophagus goes the food, the trachea, which is in the front, goes the ear, it goes into the lungs. Now, what stops all the food from going into your lungs? There's something called an epiglottis. It's like a sort of a flap, like a venting. Like you go there, you come here. This guy, this is the bouncer in the in front of there, making sure who comes in and who comes out. Now, we know that this doesn't work as well because sometimes you take a drink or you eat something and it gets stuck in there. Like, oh, wrong pipe. Wouldn't it have been smarter, says this scientist, says if we had two pipes? Why do we confuse the two? Why one pipe transitioning into two? Let's have two pipes. Let's have our mouth made for eating and our nose made for breathing. So, bad design shows that it's not a crater. So there's a few problems with that. According to scientific theory, there's a few problems with that. One of them is, if you would have two tubes in your neck, you know that now you would need a larger neck. Not as much as people want. Also, you would have more energy that is needed to, support these two things. Now let's say you have allergies, one of the, millions of people in America that have allergies, and your only breathing apparatus system is congested. So now all of a sudden allergy becomes a life-threatening condition. That you have a stuffed nose, you have a sinus congestion, you can't, because you're only breathing through, because the mouth is only meant for eating, and the nose is meant for, for breathing. Now, besides that, imagine you only have in order for your nose to work as the only breathing, apparatus, you would have, when you're running, you need to take a lot more air in. You need a lot more oxygen. That's why we usually breathe with our mouth, because our mouth is a lot larger. We're able to breathe in a lot more air. Now, in order for that to work with our nose will have to be a lot larger. For some people, that's okay already. They don't need that. But for other people, they will need a very, very large nose. Now, I'm a Jew. I'm allowed to say that. So when you think about it, now the nose is going to have to be significantly larger. Now, if it's significantly larger, you know what's going to happen? Let's say a fly goes in there. You want a fly flying around in your lungs? Yeah. It's going to go you can go all the way down to your lungs. There's so many problems coming back, which means is the only way logically that it could work is only if we have two with an epiglottis, with a little flap there that directs it. Then they say we didn't have time. That we spoke very briefly about it. The vestigial organs. You have the appendix. Back then, the scientists, the doctors were like, well, we don't know what this is. This must not do anything. Let's just take it out. But the appendix, we found out that it actually does do some help. They did experiment in rabbits that demonstrated that neonatal appendectomy impairs the development of mucosal immunity, which means is it actually affects the body. There are things in there that is needed. You look at all this. You look at all this information, everything that we presented now, and you have two options. You really have two options, and it's really your option. You have the option of saying, you know what, it's all nature. This has all happened through random mutations. This all happened by chance. This is just, it's unbelievable, it's crazy how it happened, but it happened by chance. Or you have an option to be a little bit more logical. And I don't want to impose anything on you. I'm really presenting the information. I want you to make your own decision. But if you look at it, from my perspective, the choice is obvious. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. It's not you hear what we spoke about the brain? How sophisticated it is, that all happened by chance? How crazy it is. There's so much information here that does not make sense if you say it just happens by chance. Now, granted, you can say maybe, have bitachon in science that it would go, and it'll be able to figure it out one day. As of today, where I stand, without a doubt, I see intelligent design as a very strong proof towards a creator, and that creator is God. One last thing that I want to end off is the fact that I'm sure most of you even believed in it because you're in the class. I would hope that you believe in God. If not, then it's a good thing that you came. But the most important thing, the most important thing that I feel in this class is not even about the proving of the God. I feel it is the appreciation that we need to have. Appreciate the fact that you have a working digestive system. You're able to breathe. You're able to breathe without any other outside resources that you need it. You're able to see, you're able to think, you're able to sleep, there's so much that you have to, and even if you have medical conditions, you have to be grateful for what you do have for. It is so amazing, so unbelievable, so unfathomable. Stop for a second, at least once, at least right after this class, at least once, say, God, thank you. Thank you for everything that you have done. Any questions? No questions?
Yes. Any questions also? I have a question. I just want to say, very nice lecture.
Thank you. Wow.
If you guys are interested in that sort of stuff, there's a website called Hashem.com, and it's the most beautiful website I've ever seen.
Hashem.com? I never heard about it. Really?
Beautiful, and it just shows like really cool stuff. And
I wish you would have told me this before. I would have had more material.
Stuff like that.
I'm about to Google this.
It's beautiful. It's really nice.
Chazak, thank you. I wonder if that like.
If you open it on a desktop, it's like beautiful.
Oh really?
Oh.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Or ads? I'm kidding.
If something's too good to be true, can't someone say like, oh yeah, Hashem's giving us all this reward and Hashem did all that? Like, can't that also be too good to be true?
No, because we have a lot of tests. It's very difficult. The question is, the question is how let me see if I understand the question. Like that the Torah, the afterlife is too good to be true?
Not only the afterlife, but just like, let's say, oh, the fact, like, just as an example, like, some people would want to, like, wash their hands in the morning, but Hashem gives us schar for just washing our hands in the morning. Doesn't that seem a little too good to be true? Or, like, we're getting schar.
Oh, you're saying, okay. He's saying, like,
punished for something, like, really, for that little tiny thing.
well, that's the opposite. You're going in the opposite, right. So you're saying is, like, you're going to do something anyways. Why are you going to get reward for it?
No, I'm saying that's the fact that, like, we're getting schar for something you'd want to do anyway. Like, doesn't that seem too good to be true?
Well, technically, this is a very good, that's excellent. That's an excellent question. If we're doing something, we're going to do something anyways, why do we get reward for it? And one of the main purposes for mitzvot is not because we understand something. That's why one of the, mitzvot, you have to actually think. You think that you're doing it, not because you want to do it, because God told you to do it.
It's a lot of anxiety, you know that?
Well, it depends, I guess.
No, it really is.
I don't know.
Bye. Thanks for coming. See you next week.
I know that the whole point of the schar is that Hashem's giving us something that we want to do anyway, but doesn't that seem like doesn't that come into play with that also?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's a good question. I don't think it's that problematic if let's say your father goes and you're a little kid, be like, you're going to eat anyways. But if you eat all your food, I'll give you a dessert. I'm going to need it anyways because I'm starving. So I'm going to eat anyway. So why, like, it's too good to be true. I'm like, anyways, well, I'm going to do it anyways. Why am I getting reward for it? And I don't see it. I mean, I think it's a good question, but I don't see it as a too good to be true type of situation.
But also, the other thing. Also, if spiders know how to, like, do all this spinning and stuff by imitation, and we know we have a lot of natural instincts that we do, like eating and sleeping and, like, a bunch of other things. If that would all be natural, like, if that's all natural, how could that be a mutation? Because we would be gone at this point, because trial and error would...
So that's why most of us were gone, and only the good with the survival of the fittest survived.
So we can...
I mean, you're asking a question for not for someone who, in my position, because I would say, yeah, there's obviously a creator. But according to their theology, their understanding is,
but
that...
the chances that someone would even know how to do everything we do naturally, like breathe and blink and process and all these things, like isn't that like nil?
Yeah, I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. Your theory is, your logic is very sound. Any other questions? Thank you.
I'm going to wait.
You're late. Are you showing me a question? I don't know.
Show you Hashem.com.
Oh, okay. I'll check that up afterwards.
Oh, see it on the computer.
I'm gonna at that. I'm gonna look at it. It looks it's such a great name. Good domain name. Any other questions before we close the camera? No questions before we close the camera? Going once? Going twice? Chazak u'baruch.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.